Have you seen anyone who laughs at the dead and walks away unpunished? Chidi Nwafọ, a stubborn young man from Omaka, never believed in ghost stories. When the elders spoke of spirits in Apple Forest, he scoffed. Old people and their nonsense, he often said. But that evening, after a heated argument with his uncle over land inheritance, he stormed into the forest, daring anything, human or spirit, to stop him. The deeper he walked, the more the trees seemed to whisper. Then he saw it, a massive skull resting on top of a tree stump, moss covered and cracked with age. It looked too large for any animal. Curious and annoyed, Chidi kicked it. "You think this is funny?" he sneered. Then he spoke. In a chilling voice, the skull whispered, "You poisoned the palm wine that killed Nemeka. You thought no one saw you." Chidi staggered backward. That was a secret he had buried deep. No one alive knew. That night, as he lay trembling in his hut, shadow gathered around his window. Figures from his past, those who thought long dead, whispered his name. By morning, the villagers found Chidi missing. Only a new skull rested on the tree stump beside the old one. Fade Fani, the village catechist, was the first to raise concern. "Akmulu has awoken," he told the elders. "That forest is no longer silent." Mama Nena, a widow whose son had vanished a year before, was next to speak. "I dreamt of skull, whispering my son's name," she wept. Her cries stirred uneasy glances. The people of Omaka has always respected the forest edge, never daring beyond the third tree. But now, something was reaching out. 3 boys who had gone hunting near the forest returned pale and shaking. One of them, Ikenna, said, "We heard a voice. He called each of us by name and told us things that we've done, bad things." The others confirmed it. Secret no one else could have known. Edo Kore declared a meeting. "The forest remembers," he warns. "We must cleanse it or lose our soul to it." But while the elders argued, another skull appeared on the stump, this one smaller, with a broken jawbone. It was the same size and shape as Nemeka's skull. The village began to whisper, not about spirits, but about the people who had wronged them. The elders summoned Mazi Ozurumba, the blind oracle from Ovin village. They carried him in a bamboo litter, his eyes milky white, his face wrapped in red clothes. The villagers gathered in silence as the oracle sat before the 2 skulls. He placed one palm on the first skull and the other on the new one. His head jerked backward and his eyes turned jet black. "The spirits are angry," he said in a voice that was not his. "The land drinks the blood of liars. The dead cannot sleep." A cold wind swept through the gathering. He turned to the crowd, pointing a shaky finger at 3 men, Ezekiel, Tochukwu, and Amaka. "Step forward. Your names have been spoken in this forest." Gasp erupted. Ezekiel had long been suspected of defiling a young girl. Tochukwu was a trader who once went missing during a scandal. Amaka, she was the village nurse, kind and soft-spoken. No one could believe it. The oracle said no more. He collapsed, bleeding from his nose. By nightfall, Ezekiel fled. The next morning, a third skull was found beside the others. Strange things began to happen. Ugochukwu, who disappeared 5 years ago after being accused of theft, returned, naked and shaking, at the village square. "They let me go," he whispered. "The skulls, they whispered my name. They showed me every wrong I've ever did, and when I wept, they pushed me out." He said he had no memory of where he's been, only of darkness, voices, and fireflies that stared like eyes. His story spread like wildfire. Others who had vanished in years past began to return. Some limped, some could no longer speak. Some simply stared into the distance and muttered names over and over. The villagers grew restless. Children cried at night. Dogs hollered endlessly, and every morning a new skull appeared. The elders tried to pray. The pastors fasted, but nothing stopped the skulls from appearing. It was as if the forest was digging into the heart of the village, digging up every sin. Onyeka, the son of Elder Okore, was known for his temper. He once beat a man nearly to death over a gambling debt. That man Kelechi left the village soon after and was never seen again. That night, Onyeka had his name carried by the wind over and over. Onyeka, Onyeka, Onyeka. Unable to sleep, he walked to the forest edge, drawn by the voice. The villager tried to stop him, but his eyes were glazed, his steps robotic. He entered Apollo. He never came back. In the morning, his skull joined the others. They fought. Elder Okorie collapsed in a grave. I warned you all, he wailed. But the village was no longer just grieving. It was beginning to turn on itself. Fear swept Omaka like a plague. Anyone with secret began to tremble. A new practice emerged, confession night. Every evening, villagers would gather in the square to confess past sins, hoping the skull would spare them. Some confessed to petty thefts. Others admitted to adultery, poisonings, even betrayal during the Civil War. Tears flowed, old wounds reopened, and still the skulls kept reappearing. Then Pastor Chigozie stepped forward. He confessed to killing his own brother over a woman and hiding the body in a dried-up well near his father's farm. Silence, then sobbing, then gasp. By morning, Pastor Chigozie's body was found twisted like rope on a tree at the forest edge. The well has been dug up. The bones were real. The skulls had spoken again. 6-year-old Adora started drawing skulls in the sand with disturbing accuracy. Her mother beat her for it, but the child kept repeating, "They told me to draw them. They told me who they are coming for." Soon, other children joined in. They began chanting names in their sleep, names of the guilty, names of the missing. One child, Ifunanya, pointed at her grandfather and said, "You will go to the forest tomorrow." He laughed nervously. The next day, he vanished. The skulls were now chosen, not just the guilty, but those who ignored the warnings. The village council, once united, began to crumble. Accusations flew like arrows. "You protected him. You knew what she said. You bribed the priest to hide the truth." Old alliances shattered. The chief priest, Nze Michael, fled to another village, leaving behind his shrine. People began to abandon Omaka in droves, heading for neighboring towns. But even there, they claimed to see shadows, to hear whispers. Apollo's reach was growing. For weeks, the skulls were silent. Then one night, thunder cracked the skies and lightning struck the forest edge. The next morning, a massive skull, twice the size of the others, appeared on the stump. It was smooth, polished, and gleamed with a strange light. The talking skull. A boy approached it, and he spoke. "The land is poisoned by your hands. The dead rise because the living lie. You must bring the child born with the mark." The villagers were confused. "What child? What mark?" Mama Ezinne fainted. She had a secret. Her granddaughter, Chiamaka, has been born with a strange red spiral on her chest. Chiamaka, only 8 years, was playful and kind. But when her mother revealed the mark on her chest, the villagers fell silent. "She's the one," whispered an old woman. They brought her to the talking skull. She placed her hand on it. The ground shook. The skull glowed. Then a soft voice echoed, "She alone can silence the dead." Chiamaka looked up and said, "I have to enter the forest." "No!" the mother screamed. The skull had spoken, and the forest was waiting. Led by the talking skull whispers, Chiamaka entered the forest alone. The trees bent to let her pass. Skulls lined the path, their eyes glowing faintly. In the center of Apollo, she found a pit filled with bones and smoke. The voice said, "Speak their names. Forgive them." She closed her eyes and repeated the names she has had in her dreams. Names of the lost, the guilty, even her own ancestors. As she spoke, the skulls began to vanish, one by one, turning to dust. The wind changed, the whispers ceased, and then silence. Chiamaka returned at dawn. Behind her, the forest stood quiet, still, peaceful. The skull were gone. Those who remained wept and rejoiced. The talking skull had vanished, and no new ones appeared. The land grew fertile again, birds sang, but the village changed its ways. They erected a shrine not to fear, but to truth, a place where people confessed, forgave, and healed. And every year, on the day Chamaka walked into Apollo, the village gathers and tells her story. The girl who silenced the skulls, the child who forgave the dead. And deep in the forest, if you listen closely, you can still hear the echo. Speak the truth or be spoken of. Moral of the story. This story teaches us that every action has consequences. Secrets buried in darkness will eventually come to light, and the spirits of the wrong never sleep forever. The talking skull reminds us that truth brings peace, but lies invite destruction. It also shows that even a child, when led by purity and forgiveness, can silence generation of evil. We must all learn to live justly, confess when we are wrong, and seek reconciliation before it's too late. Dear viewers, what would you do if the forest whispered your name? Do you think confessing your sins can truly save you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling African tales every week. And remember, the forest is always listening. See you next time.